right, welcome to this edition of Go Beyond the Wines Conversations. My name is Ashley Komarick from Komarick Communications, where we help wineries train their teams to go beyond the wine so that they can turn their guests into lifelong raving fans, members of their wine clubs, and avid consumers of their wines. I am joined today by an icon of the BC wine industry. Yeah, don't chuckle, John. It's
No,
real.
ever heard one.
Yeah, so I'm joined today by John Skinner, who together with his wife Trish Skinner has founded Painted Rock Winery. And in a very short time, John, in 15 years that you've been making wine, which is kind of a short length of time in winemaking terms, if you think about it on a global scale, in that short amount of time, you've been able to win awards and be recognized by none other than Jancis Robinson, who gave you very favorable reviews. Yeah. So congratulations on your success and your commitment to excellence. You're really a pinnacle of excellence for our wine country. John, I'd love to talk to you today about how you've responded, how your winery responded when we were all hit with COVID and everything had to shut down. What was the reaction? What did it look like at Painted Rock?
Well, you know, we've had we really looked at I guess if there's anything fortunate, it happened at a time when we were otherwise rather shut down. It was a quiet time. So it enabled us to not think, to think with purpose and to think with really in a deliberate manner. Like we wanted not only to find a solution for Painted Rock, but we thought, I'm a real industry guy. And I think, you know, I don't promote Painted Rock on the international scene. I promote the Okanagan, BC, and Canada. And that's just the way I'm wired. And I thought the primary thing, and we got our team together, and I said, the primary thing that we need to do is we need first and foremost to have rules of the game for the industry. So we rolled our sleeves up. I've talked to BCWI. We've coalesced a group of wineries. We've all tried to get a common methodology that is going to ensure that there isn't a weak link in here. And that's, I think we've been very successful at that. And then we tried to think of how are we going to make, you know, who are the most vulnerable in this circumstance? It's not Painted Rock. We are exceptionally fortunate to have a very large wine club, and they are incredibly loyal. So I hats off to them. I'm so thankful that we have them. But at the same time, I'm not taking advantage of that. I'm trying to think, who's most vulnerable? Well, it's not the really big guys. It's not the guys like me with wine clubs and that have some presence. It's the guys that are entirely dependent upon what has been sacrificed, and that is farm. It's the farm gate sale and it's the restaurant sale. And if you're completely dependent upon those two channels, we love the restaurant business and the farm gate business, but we survive without it. And we're there to support the restaurants, and we really want to help them. And we're going to make the farm gate experience safe and fun. But what I've really tried to do is get people to support and help the smaller guys, the farm gate dependent guys, because they're the fabric of our industry. And if you don't have them, if they are sacrificed through this, then we've taken a big step backwards. And so I encourage people, you know, go online and buy something from a little guy. Buy something from, you know, or even if they don't have an online presence, call them. Do it, because most of these wineries are now, they've got curbside pickup, and it will really help. I'm on a committee with the city of Penticton. It's a COVID committee. It's a group of business people that the city has put together. And they asked me for my recommendations about what could be done in the wine industry. And I said, you need to help these guys. This sort of model of under 5,000 cases, you know, quite a bit smaller than that even. And a lot of, I suggested you probably want to give them help with hydro. You want to give them tax deferrals. You want to give them the things that will make sure that they don't have a gun at their head.
Right.
And you know, so I think, and that was well received by the city. They said, you know, they said, okay, I don't know what they finally implemented, but they were exceptionally receptive, because they realize how important, you know, you don't want to be left with 10 successful wineries in this region. We don't want to go back to the 20 we used to have. We got 300. We want them all, you know.
Right. Yeah, that's
So that's where my energies have been. I'm not in the tasting room. I generally at Painted Rock. I do the international stuff and I do the political stuff in BC and Canada. And I've worked very hard trying to get the Ontario situation, direct to consumer issue resolved.
yeah.
And I wrote a letter. I don't know if they're going to publish it, but I wrote a letter to the editor of Globe and Mail yesterday. And yeah. I think, you know, it's a time when, as I said, you have to think outside of the box, and we can encourage people to come, provided it's safe. We can offer them a wonderful experience, but let's grow the channels that are growable. And my wine, you know, I sell a lot. We just released our Chardonnay and it sold out in hours. We released our Rosé and it sold out in hours. Like I'm really, really thankful for that. But I'm not looking a gift horse in the mouth here. I'm trying to say, let's open up the channels. Bill C-311 passed 7 years ago, and the fact that we still can't sell wine into Ontario direct to consumers is absolutely ridiculous. Ontario wineries can sell direct to consumers in BC. BC residents can point, click, and buy Ontario wines. Why won't they reciprocate? There's a very good chance they're going to on Canada Day, and if they do, this is going to change the landscape of BC wine. So what I'll then do is try to act as a go-between between a lot of these smaller wineries that are incapable of, you know, I'm not saying they're incapable really, but I want to offer, I want to make it easier. I want to put together.
It's a question of resources.
You know what? That's right. Because the only people that will sell direct to consumer in Ontario are the people that aren't big enough to use the facilities of the LCBO. So why don't we put together 50 willing wineries and consolidate an order and ship it and store it, so that then there's an easy remedy to everybody's access to that massive population of Canadians that should get to experience our stuff. So that's where my energies are. I just think there's a ripe opportunity for us to get better at what we do.
Absolutely, yes. And goodness knows we all need wine, especially now with the pandemic. Yeah. So I am intrigued and so impressed by, you know, the way that you're describing how the communities come together in Penticton, the city administration and the wineries and this group that you formed to support the smaller producers. Now, is there a place, have you created an association or somewhere with a website with the list of these wineries, or how would you recommend people find them?
That's a really good question. We haven't. I'm president of an association called the Okanagan Wine Initiative, and we are 7 very aggressive exporters. And we found one another to try. And what we do is we go on the international scene together, and we promote not ourselves, we promote our region, but offer ourselves as an example. And so we were, you know, before this happened, we were slated to go to Germany in March. We were at the Wine Festival in Vancouver. Then we were going to Germany to Provine. And then we're going from Provine to Singapore to launch Okanagan Wines in Singapore. We're going from Singapore to London we would be in London right now at Canada House, doing an event at Canada House, an event at 67 Pall Mall. And then we're coming back, we're going to launch in November in New York. And then none of that's happening. So you know what? It's just, I saved a lot on flights, but I'm losing, you know, it's what I'm trying to do now is just refocus our energies. And it's hopefully the British Columbia, the visitors that are going to come, you know, they're going to be driving and it's a stay at home summer. So let's make it safe, fun. And so, sorry, getting back to the small wineries, we don't have a list per se at this moment, but you know, they're all the small little regions, the Cowichan Valley, you know, I would suggest you just go and, you know, check out some of these regions like the Similkameen. There are lots of small ones, and you know, Corsolets, Averill Creek, like these are fabulous wineries that it'll give people an opportunity to discover something new and wonderful, and also support them. I'm not saying that Averill Creek's small; they're as big as I am, and they're very successful. But there's Mike Neary Ishlow. He's got Emandair just a fabulous little winery over in Cowichan Valley. There you
Okay.
go.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. And I know, the BC Wine Institute has a list of some of
They
the,
totally
not
do.
all, yeah,
Yeah,
quite an extensive list of their members. So that's another resource for the
it's a
listeners.
good call. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. Awesome. So John, tell me about things that have happened at Painted Rock that you've implemented. Your team has thought of new ideas to overcome the challenges of
Oh yeah.
COVID,
Oh
and
yeah. We've
what's
nine
going on,
ways.
and what are you keeping? What are you going to
Okay.
keep?
What we're going to do is we're it's just good fortune that we've got a tasting, a bar that is very, very long. So we're going to have, when you drive up to Painted Rock, there's going to be, it's, the signage is extraordinarily organized and specific. And thank you, my daughter Lauren, you did a really good job. And Kate, they've done this, and it shows you where to come, and then your hands are sanitized when you come in. And generally, they're going to be by appointment, so we will be totally prepared. Washrooms will be cleaned once an hour, and there's social distancing shown on the floor. We've had all the signage done, like it's really done, and we've got all the plexiglass to keep everybody safe, and everything is very, very separated. So that's there shouldn't be an issue in the least. The other thing is that our walls are all on sliding glass door, like 5-panel sliding glass doors. So we're going to keep the air moving. And if it costs me a little bit more in air conditioning, I don't care. I'm going to keep it safe and good and keep those things open, so that when we do tastings inside and we do picnics outside, there's going to be, I think we do 15 weddings a year. And we've got a grass promontory that's about down at a lower level that's about 50 yards. So we're going to have a few picnic areas down there and a few picnic areas in the upper area, so that everybody's 20 feet apart or so. And we've actually bought quite a bit of nice exterior furniture to be able to implement that. And it's just casual. We have blankets and nice chairs and tables, and then we're working very closely with a local business called Brodo, and they're creating 4 different picnic options for us.
Fantastic.
It's 4 different sets. It's really good.
Talk about making lemonade with this lemon of COVID.
You know what? Well, that's just it. Yeah. And we went to a local business that we really admire, and asked them to, what they would do. And so there would be 4 different sandwich options, and then a salad and a cookie and a water. And then if you want to do that and have a bottle of wine or a glass of wine or whatever, that's what we're going to offer. We just want it to be, it's a glorious sight, and we want to share it and encourage people to come and take their time.
Wonderful adaptation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well done. Yeah. And I've seen, of course, photos, and I visited actually last year, and it's a stunning site. So,
my biggest responsibility in this whole 16-year journey is don't screw it up. Because it just, when I found the property in 2004, there used to be 800 stumps on it. And it was, but I remember just standing in the middle of it, looking at it thinking, what an opportunity, so we've actually moved very judiciously, not to respectfully remove the stumps, to build architecture that's worthy of the site. I remember talking to the architect, and I just wouldn't sign off on these things he was showing me for a while. And then a young man in his office came to me and with the building that we built, and he said he had actually made a model of this building and came to my house in West Van and showed it to me. And I shook his hand and said, build it. It's just perfect. He listened to me. I said, I want something worthy of the site that honors it, but sits artfully on it. And those are the instructions. And he just came up with it. I said, man, that is just perfect. And I just, I couldn't be more thankful. It's just glory. It's just, it's timeless.
Fantastic. Yes. Thank goodness for those architects that actually listen to the client.
Oh, that's a real skill. No, he completely did. And that's a talent. I had a funny little aside. I had a gentleman asking me some really serious architecture questions a couple of years ago. He was there. He was probably in his 70s, and there's a younger man with him. and he's asked me these really pointed questions, and I said, listen, I just don't have that answer. I could ask my architect. And the young man turned to me and he said, this is my father-in-law. He runs the architecture school at UCLA. But his points were, he said, whoever designed this building is brilliant. His ability to discreetly light on the interior, like where lighting isn't obvious. He said, this guy just is fabulous at it. And I was so happy to share that with the guy. My architect's name is Dominic Unsworth. I was so happy to share that with him because, that is a compliment. Somebody who runs an architecture school to say, whoever did this is brilliant. That was really nice. Yeah.
It sounds like you're going to end up in a textbook at some point. So John,
well, he will. Yeah.
Okay, good. So what are your predictions for the 2020? Well, you're not going to be traveling. We know that. Hopefully you'll do all of those shows and all of those activities in 2021, because that sounds like a really exciting series of goals and experiences and promotion opportunities. But now at the winery, what are you foreseeing? In terms of visitors, where are the visitors coming from? How long are they staying?
Well, the average tasting is we allot half an hour, and we're going to be very, we want it to be fun, and generally people would, an average tasting is really around 20 minutes, so we just allocated half an hour, and then because we're showing 4 wines, and then for our wine club there are a couple of others, and our focus is really on that. But this has also brought something really interesting to the plate for me. And because I've been very active internationally, I've got to know Jancis Robinson. I consider Stephen Spurrier to be quite a good friend, and he's been very available. Our wine initiative brought him to the Okanagan in October with Dave McIntyre from the Washington Post. We spent several days with him. It was a magnificent time. Well, what I'm going to be doing, this is interesting. You see the Zoom. I did a Zoom last week with Richard Hemming. Richard Hemming is Master of Wine. He's Jancis Robinson's right-hand man. Richard moved to Singapore about almost a year ago, maybe 9 months ago. His wife's opened a private school there. And he can conduct his, he can do what he does almost anywhere. So they go to Singapore. I had put together the plan for the Okanagan Wine Initiative to go and launch in Singapore, and Richard was going to help. Well, when this all fell apart, both of us started thinking outside of the box. Richard phoned me one day and he said, John, if you can't come, why don't we do a Zoom call about your wines with 67 Pall Mall members. There are 2 locations at 67 Pall Mall. One is 67 Pall Mall in London, and the other in Singapore. And he said, and we'll do it at the same time. I said, okay, how does that work with the clock? And he said, the way I have it figured out, John, you have to do it at 4 a.m. And I did it. And it was an hour and change, and we were laughing and having so much fun. I went up to the winery and I did it. And Richard is such a generous guy. He knows me well. Like we're good friends, and he knows the journey and what we're trying to do. And the thing about wine, very specifically, is, when you have a product to sell, selling it it can be done in different ways. And my approach to selling wine is not telling you how good it is. It's pouring it. That's it. It's the final arbiter is the consumer, and the final arbiter is the buyer. So I am all about, it's such a nice opportunity for a guy like Richard to speak to it, because he's tasting it. He's giving his objective. He doesn't owe me a favor. And wine is an incredibly, there's so much depth of knowledge in it. I don't pretend to have the answers. I just try to, instead of me, I don't make the wine. This journey has been, if I played to a strength in this, is knowing what you don't know. And what I did, and I know I don't know much. So what I did do was I hired the best, and I employ Alain Soutre from Bordeaux. I bring him over. I brought him over every second month since I started. Every second month from Bordeaux. and he is so engaged in what we're doing. When we did a dinner at 67 Pall Mall in London this time last year, and the theme of the dinner, there were 14 people at the dinner. Jancis Robinson sat to my left. To her left was Alan Sutra. Stephen Spurrier was right across the table from me. It was pretty amazing. The theme of the dinner was Okanagan wineries that worked with Alan Sutra.
Wow.
And he just knocked it out of the park, because he'd never met Jancis Robinson before. But if you read that Financial Times article, she said, and John employs the dapper Bordeaux consultant, Alan Sutra. Well, when I sent him the article and I said, hey, look at this, it's so exciting. And Alan phoned me back a few minutes later and said, John, what does the word dapper mean?
It's good. It's good.
It's good. I said from Jancis, that's a good thing. Anyway,
Definitely.
We're doing okay. And
that's awesome.
I think I really was sidelined from your question about COVID.
Well, no, and this is really great. And I love what you said about how, knowing what you don't know, and in experiencing wine, it's very subjective. And so, like you said, it's not me telling you this is good wine, therefore you should want to buy it at all. It's, what's appealing to your palate, what's giving you that happy sensation because it's exceeding your expectations or is giving you a certain kind of delight that others don't. Just, it's your very subjective taste buds. So and I think that's really a key thing that you
well, another thing, sorry for interrupting, but another thing that happened, I very generously was invited to do a Zoom call with the family of one of my son's friends, and they're really wonderful people, and it was really nice. And I think we did this, there must have been 12, there's maybe 6 or 8 couples, and I just they had bought 4 bottles of wine, we shipped them to them, and then we scheduled the Zoom tasting, and it was so much fun. Like honestly, I think we did it for 2 hours, because it was just, it was lots to talk about and lots of fun questions. And, I'm never a shortage of words. I just like, I'm so interested in the industry. And I love these were really knowledgeable, some really knowledgeable business people. And they were posing some good questions. And it was such a nice opportunity. Well, a week later, one of them called me and asked if I'd do it with, they're part of this, of a very powerful organization. And, they said, would you do this again for our members? And I said, I'd be happy to. Well, I'm doing one on the 11th for 30 of their 30 couples.
Amazing.
And that's, again, it's building your community, but it's doing it in a way that's safe and functional and fun. And if Zoom is the way we do it, then that's just another part of the finding ansers.
Absolutely.
So they don't have to drive up here. But I just thoroughly, I'm so wonderfully honored for that opportunity.
It's an amazing turn of awareness, consciousness around the ability to actually savor wine together, so to speak, quote unquote, together, through a virtual platform where, you're in your location. And like you said, from anywhere in the world, from Singapore, from London, from West Vancouver, wherever you happen to be, and you can have that convivial experience and that shared experience without even being really physically together, which I think is a discovery we would not have made quite so quickly anyway if we didn't have this pandemic to deal with.
That's exactly it. And it's one of these things that's, and now I'll probably be doing, again, the social media thing. We just have a team. My daughter and my team just know this stuff so well that it's kept us engaged with all of our people. And that's really, it's something that you kind of need. Well, we totally need, but even our community, like they're usually they're either planning a trip up, or if they're not going to be, well, now we just have this kind of connection, whether it's on Facebook or whatever, we're really trying to be attentive to it, and it's paid. Those efforts that was a really good, smart approach that that my daughter encouraged us to do it. Hallelujah.
That's awesome. So that's great advice, I think, for any winery is to, just find different ways to connect and build the
God,
community and be in the
if I have any
community.
advice for anybody, it is if you didn't have a wine club, like, do it and make
Yeah.
it rewarding for people. It's not about, and I have advice for, just, I guess the way I approached the wine club was from experience, because I was a member of a number of Napa Valley wine clubs
Hmm.
in the 90s. And I I quit the wine clubs that would send me stuff they wanted to send me. I was a member of some really good wineries, wine clubs, and the better ones enabled me to pick what I wanted. And there was it wasn't forcing wine down my throat. It was giving me, I wanted to create verticals of things. I wanted access to stuff that people couldn't get, please. And
Hmm.
and that's what we tried to do in ours now, is to be very, there's a 6 bottle once a year commitment, and you maintain your, so it's not a lot of money. But then when we do have the release, you committed to this delivery of 6 bottles, and it would be one of the 2 clubs. It would be 2 of Merlot, Syrah, and Chardonnay, or Merlot, Syrah, and Red Icon, and then you'll get that. But, and this is the but, if you want to change it, just get in touch with us. Well, we have a full-time wine club manager, and everybody changes their orders. Everybody changes it. They say, I just like Cabernet Franc, or I want 17 bottles of this and 36 of that, whatever. It's the malleability makes it very respectful of the consumer.
Of
And
course,
because
yeah.
everybody, the other thing that I really know about wine, if I've learned anything, is you shouldn't be intimidated around it. And this is what I
Hmm.
tell people on the calls. Like, I had in the first call that I was talking about the other night with the couples, some people were kind of apologetic. I don't really know that much about wine. I said, sure you do. You know what you like.
Yeah.
The first thing is, you know what you like, and don't be afraid. Don't assume that other people know more about what you should like than what you know what, it's all about taste and flavor, and then the longer you're at it, you'll start to notice attributes, and you'll start to
Hmm.
hear, hey, there's, how do people, some of the verbiage and descriptors. Well, when they do WSET, they are tasting whether it's the berry that people will refer to, and they'll understand, oh, I get it in that, or whether it's the herbaceousness, oh, I get that's herbaceousness. What the thing is that's going to be identified, well, they've practiced. So
You
don't
bet.
feel intimidated that you don't. Like, when I'm around my daughter, who's WSET level 3 and did her MBA in Bordeaux, she knows this stuff. So I just said, oh, good, I don't have to do that. I just and then
Wow.
let her write. Lauren writes the tasting notes. She does it really well. So
Oh my
I don't
goodness.
have to,
What a precious resource.
but I don't have to beat myself up over it either.
No,
Just,
no. And whatever, I think a key is meeting your guests where they are at, and, welcoming them and putting them at ease so that they
totally.
can learn and
Yeah.
feel comfortable around wine. Because I think that's something that we find in the industry, is that there is this kind of intimidation or feeling that wine is too sophisticated and we don't understand it enough. But yeah, if we
Yeah.
can offer that hospitality in such a way that it's warm and welcoming and putting
Yep.
people at ease, then I think we'll be further ahead for,
It comes from my experience, because when I first started, I remembered being kind of intimidated around people who really, when they knew I was starting a winery, I watched a good friend of mine, Ray Signorello, I watched him build his winery down in Napa Valley in the 80s and
Mm,
90s. And he put on a summer party every year. And I'd go down to it and had a fantastic time. And he did a magnificent job. Well, when I bought Painted Rock and was going to plant it and do all these things, I went down to there for one of the summers, or to his party,
yeah.
and the conversation came up that I was starting a winery, and there were a lot of winery owners and some really knowledgeable people, and there was one guy in particular that kept on throwing really hard questions at me, and I tried to answer for about 30 seconds, and then I looked at him and I said, the good thing about my position in this is, if I don't have the answer, I employ someone who does. And it took the heat. And I've said that ever since, because I employ Alain Sutra. Alain consults to some of the top wineries. He consults to Chateau Bécheval, some of the top wineries in the world. And we're his
Amazing.
passion project. So if I if I have him to defer to, good luck.
Yeah,
You
you're
know,
in good shape. That's
I'm in
right.
really good shape, and it
Yeah.
takes the heat off,
Yeah.
makes it a lot easier.
Wise. That sounds like a very enlightened approach to management and leadership. So, John, I have one final question for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to tell me about the care. So, I like to think that wine is like people in the sense that it has characteristics and personality traits. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So, I'm going to ask you to describe one of your wines and its characteristics and personality traits, and tell us how that wine resembles you or how you resemble that wine.
Oh, isn't that neat? I love it. Goodness. You know, the the wine that I'm most excited about right now, and it's something that just surprised the heck out of me, because we went into this with a vision of planting the 5 Bordeaux varietals
Mm-hmm.
and then enabling our winemaker to have a full suite of opportunity to um, make an Okanagan blend. Okay, and that was the thing. When I hired Alain Sutra, I told him the one thing is, if you're going to work with me, I don't want to make a Bordeaux blend. We planted those varietals because they're known to complement one another in really, really good ways. But
Uh-huh.
we're the Okanagan. We're not Bordeaux. We have different terroir. We have different influences. So throw the rule book out, and I want you to think outside of the box. And Alain looked at me and he said, if you said anything differently, John, I wouldn't work for you. And that was the launch. Well,
Mm-hmm.
then, of these varieties, so in year one, we would put the blend together, and then we'd, of the 5 Bordeaux varieties, what was left over, if it was worthy as a standalone varietal, like our Merlot and our Cab Sauv,
Mm-hmm.
they would do it. But we used to use the majority of our Malbec would go into the blend, and if it didn't, it would actually go into our Merlot, because the early young vines, there was a lot of tannin in the Merlot, so it needed to be softened by the Malbec. So that was a really cooperative kind of thing that we discovered. But in 2013, this is a seminal moment in the growth of Painted Rock, and I know the date, November 3rd, 2013. Alain Sutra has been trying to teach me how to discern aromatics in a berry. And without putting a berry in your nose, I don't know how to do it. He said, can you get these aromatics? And I said, no, I can't. It's in my mouth, and no, I don't get it. Well, in 2013, we'd harvested 70% of that planting block, our Cabernet Franc. And I took a berry, and I tasted it, and I turned to Alain and I said, do you get these aromatics? And he laughed at me and he said, John, if you didn't get it now, you'd never get it. It was just so incredibly pronounced. And so I said, or he said, I want to see what's happened here, because something profound has happened year over year, because we had never done a standalone varietal Cabernet Franc. Because if you tasted it with me in our winery, out of a barrel sample, it was quite linear. It just never had the mid-palate and mouthfeel to make it a worthy standalone varietal. So it was a role player. It almost all went into our red icon, and it was the aromatics, and it was so I just resigned myself to the fact that we will never do. So that was 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Finally, in 13, we have this incredibly expressive fruit. And Alain said, John, with what's remaining, that 30%, we have enough for the icon right now. I want you to let it hang as long as you can, because we saw there was an inert weather pattern coming. And it's either going to be magical or you're going to pour it down the drain. Well, we harvested it on November 23rd, and you know what? It was magic. It was fabulous. And now, when I go internationally, we do a Cabernet Franc very deliberately now, because I brought all my wines into a restaurant, in the number 1 restaurant in the city of Bordeaux, is called Le Chapon Fin. And I brought my 5 wines in there, and I'm tasting with the chef sommelier. They got 5 or 6 sommeliers there.
Wow.
I tasted the four wines with them, or the first 4. And the guy looked at me and he said, John, these wines are extraordinary. I'm going to take them all. And I just fell off my seat. I said, my wine, top restaurant in Bordeaux. And then I said, well, just hang on 1 second. I've got one more wine. Can I pour? And he said, what's that? And I said, it's my Cabernet Franc. And he said, I got to stop you right there. we as a community, as a group in our front at the restaurant, all the Psalms have an agreement that we will only try Cabernet Franc from. We'll only buy Cabernet Franc from 4 regions because it has to have bright acidity, and it's Loire. And he rattled them off.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you like the other wines? Would you just indulge me? And he said, okay, sure, why not? Well, I poured it for him, and he lived with it. Didn't taste it. Lived with it for 5 minutes, the longest 5 minutes of my life. and then he finally tasted it, put his glass down. He said, we just found our 5th region. It's just, honestly, my heart stopped.
Oh my God.
So that wine is at Le Chapon Fin. That's the one that they carry. The number 1 restaurant in the city of London, England is the Clove Club, and they carry our Cabernet Franc. So if there's any of our varieties that reminds me of me, it's because it's such a fluke. That's what it is.
That's what it is about that wine.
That's what it is. It's just and it's me in the wine industry. Who'd have thunk it? Like my friends in the city, I used to be in the investment banking business. With friends of mine that see I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and we're getting there, and our business makes sense, and it's been de-risked. It's we're a healthy business. And when I started Painted Rock, I put it in a family trust, and it's a legacy family business. So this isn't a transaction for me. My life was transactions before, and this is different. This is going on to my daughter and son are the 2nd generation. My 2 granddaughters, they each have a daughter, and that's Emma and Evelina. And those 2 girls, they're the 3rd generation. And that's really exciting. So if you think of it that way, you can never make a compromise. Because our brand is, I'm just a shepherd of it. And if you think of it, that's a very calming position to be in, because when I'm given opportunities to cut corners, I just say no. There've been a million times people have counseled me on ways I could cut corners, and I just said, the day that Alain Sutra tells me to cut a corner, I will. But his reputation is very attached to what we're doing, and he's having a dinner, sitting, drinking our wine with Jancis Robinson. You think he's going to cut a corner? Not a chance. And I wouldn't undermine him on that journey either. Like it's just something that, there are going to be times when you have to make sub-economic decisions. In 2010, it was a very wet, cold year, and we had hoped in that year to harvest 75 tons of fruit. And it was because it was wet and cold, things were ripening more slowly. Alain just came up to me one day and he said, I want your staff to go out and drop 1/3 of the fruit to ensure that we get, because we had already won Lieutenant Governor, like the 07 vintage, we won Lieutenant Governor awards. The 9 vintage, we won, like we were really getting there. And he said, if you want to be on that same path, you have to know you're getting the right fruit. Drop 25 tons of fruit. Well, at that point, we knew this was a very, very sub-economic vintage. We weren't going to make it. Well, you know what happened after that? We had 50 tons of fruit hanging, and about I think it was 15 bears came in, because we were deer fenced, but we couldn't keep the bears out. And I phoned the conservation officer in Penticton. We're in the city of Penticton. I said, we got 15 bears in here. My staff are scared stiff. And the guy laughed at me and he said, they're calling your property the dinner table. And I said, God, what? I was mad at him. I said, can you get over here and get rid of these things? And he said, there's no other vineyard with that problem. And he said, they can smell ripe fruit. You've got ripe fruit, and they're coming to your place.
Oh,
and
goodness.
That was a lesson. And I said, okay, that was a lesson. I said, they'll get me this year, but ever since, we've electrified the perimeter, so they can't get it anymore. I said, we called that vintage 2010, we called it the Barely There vintage. Dearly.
Right.
There. We lost a lot of fruit. Anyway,
oh my goodness.
These are the things that happen, and farming is farming, and you got to I've learned to roll with the punches.
And that's the amazing thing about the wine business and being a winemaker and a steward of a company that makes wine and that exports it and shares it. Essentially, it's a product of the earth, and it's a very deep process of production and distribution and from you're a farmer and you're a business person. So and everything in between.
But another thing I'll mention that I didn't, and that's we're organic, and we don't play that card from a marketing standpoint, because I think that people overplay it, and people will see the word organic on it and say, yeah, it's going to taste like garbage, but it's probably good for me. No, we just don't need. We have fantastic air movement. It's a windy site, so we don't have issues with rot and mildew and all that kind of stuff. So we don't. If you come and you look underneath my plants, you see a lot of vineyards where you look underneath the plant and it looks like a runway underneath. There's not a weed, and those guys spray Roundup. Roundup never becomes inert. It's a hideous thing. It stays in your property, or else it leaches down into Skaha Lake, and I'm just not going to do it. So as I said, I'm a steward of it. I'm not going to be the guy who toxified that beautiful. We're 100% estate. We don't commingle anything with anybody, and all our fruit comes from that one site. So we're really intent on maintaining its incredible vitality and not spoiling it with some toxic chemicals.
I think that is a wonderful note to close on, and it's so reassuring, and I don't know. I feel really good to know that there are people like you out there stewarding the land and taking responsibility.
Oh, there are.
In that way.
When I first started in this industry, it was it's morphed. It really has. A lot of them were drawing from the same talent pool, and they're doing the same thing. And this industry has a good energy in it right now, and they're using. We've hired, a lot of us have hired international people, and I look at my peers. I've actually referred Alana Sutra to a few other wineries. It's just making our industry better. And Chris Coletta with Haywire. They bring in a top consultant from South America. Good on. I love this stuff. That's what our industry needs, and we're really benefiting from it.
Absolutely, and may it continue to grow. And this tide bringing all the boats up. I love it. Yeah. Thank you so much for your insights and your energy, and for the great work that you and your team are all doing there at Painted Rock. John, I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.